the XS Noize Podcast with Mark Millar.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 40 of the XS Noize Music Podcast. I'm your host, my name is Mark Millar, and this week my guest is synth legend Gary Numan. We will be talking about his amazing new album Intruder and much, much more. If you missed last week's episode, I was joined by Alice Merton. We talked about her new single Vertigo, writing for her new album, and being a judge on The Voice. So check it out. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, and all the usual streaming services. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews, and interviews, then check out our main website at accessnoize.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Here's XS Noize writer Dan Lynch with some highlights of what's on the website this week.
Lee Campbell reviews synth rock legend Gary Numan's 14th studio album Intruder, saying Numan gives our battered planet a voice that sonically rips through you, full of anger, sadness and betrayal. Intruder gets a score of 8 out of 10 from us. The OES Centre in Belfast has announced its 5th Women's Work Programme, celebrating women in the music industry. This year's festival includes a collaborative cover of the Kate Bush classic Running Up the Hill, and there's a chance to get involved in an electronic music workshop run by Hannah Peel. All the details are in our news section. And live music is beginning to emerge from lockdown, and it seems every week there are more and more tour announcements. This week, Eagles of Death Metal, Catalogue 3 and Madness are among those with dates for later this year. You can find all of those at xsnoize.com.
Synth rocker Gary Numan is back with his 18th album Intruder. Since coming to prominence with era-defining hits such as Cars and Our Friends Electric, Gary Numan has remained consistently creative and has released a huge catalogue of work. His impact on electronic and alternative music has been hailed by pioneers such as Prince, David Bowie and 9 Inch Nails, and remains impactful today, with Kanye West and Lady Gaga both crediting Gary as a huge influence. I have always been a huge fan of Gary Numan's work, so it was such a pleasure to sit down with him to talk about his new album Intruder and his amazing career so far. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Music Podcast with the legend that is Gary Numan. How you doing, Gary?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Very good.
So, how have you and your family been coping during the madness of lockdown?
I've been all right personally. I think part of that is because I've been so busy. There's the album coming out. I did the book. Sort of several other things, all of which were quite important projects, and it's just kept my mind sort of focused on doing things which are, sort of interesting and challenging and so on. And so, in fact, when the pandemic first hit, I was still deep into making the album. So I was going out to the studio in the morning. I'll come back in the evening and it was dark, so I'm not going to do much else, go to bed, wake up, and repeat. And so the fact that the whole world had kind of changed, I was aware of it, but it didn't really affect my life. My life was exactly the same as it was before. I just carried on making a record. And then I wrote the book. Then I went back to making a record. So I didn't really become aware of just how different it was until sort of August time when we travelled to England again. We came back to Britain for something. And then it sort of hit me a little bit. And even since that shock of August, I came back from that and just got, straight back into work again. So I've just been really busy. And I think it helps, it helps that, your mind's occupied. You're not missing things as much as you might normally miss them, because in this period, I tend to be sort of focused on what I'm doing anyway, and not going out a lot and doing a lot of things other than the work. Mm-hmm. I think for the kids, it's particularly bad because they're all teenagers. They all want to be out and about and socializing and going to gigs. All the things that teenagers do, which is such an important part of integrating and socializing with the world at large, sort of beyond school. And they've not been able to do that. They've not been at school. They've not had any sort of one-on-one time really with anyone apart from family. So I guess they're sick to death of us. They got all sorts of anxieties about, having to, when they do, they're going back to school one day a week now, and they've been absolutely beside themselves and worry about that. And I couldn't understand that. These are your friends. But it's a real problem. It really is. And pretty much every parent at the school is saying the same thing. The kids are really struggling, all of them.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they feel better soon.
Yeah.
You released your brand new album, Intruder, which is amazing, as I said before, on May the 21st. It follows 2017 Savage, which was it became your highest charting album, I think, in your career. How did that feel?
It's hard to describe it without sounding as if you're lying, to be honest. But because I've had number ones before, and that was obviously amazing. And people think, well, being a number two, good as it is, can't possibly compare with being a number one. But for me, it did. For me, it was better because when the number ones came early on, and I don't mean to sound arrogant, I'm not saying that I deserved it or anything like that, but it seemed to be easy. I did one album, didn't do much. Second album, number one. Next one, number one. Next one, number one. And all you're doing is sitting at home writing songs. It all just seemed to fall in my lap. No, I know from bitter experience now that isn't the case. I didn't give them the weight, I think. I didn't give those early achievements the weight that they deserved. I just kind of took it in my stride and just carried on and got on with life. There was no great struggle attached to those, no great sacrifice or anything really. I just woke up, wrote some songs, got a contract, and very luckily it went to number one. I was incredibly lucky. Savage was a 35 year slog. The career went from really good to start with to terrible to almost finished. By 92, I was dead and buried really, career wise. So it's been a very, very long and tortuous kind of journey to get back from the heights, which is probably sort of 1981. I did some shows at Wembley where I said I was going to retire for a bit. That was a terrible mistake. And I think I've been trying to recover everything that I lost at that moment, because I pretty much shot my own career in the foot. I mean, it's all my own fault. I'm not blaming anybody. So from 1981 to 2017, however many years that is, it was just, inching forward, and you're desperately just trying to get back to some degree of sort of success. And so when Savage happened, all of that struggle, all of those years, it all just sort of poured out. And when Gemma said to me, she answered the phone because I was too scared to do it, and to get that chart position. When she said it was number two, I cried like a baby, absolutely uncontrollable for a good 10 minutes. She filmed it actually because she's evil. But and I had no idea that emotion was there. It obviously all those years and all of that struggling and all of that desire and hopes and wishes and all the disappointments, all of that was just sitting in there like a big old ball. And that news that it was number two, it just went, and out it came. So for me, that meant far more, and I was far more proud of it, and it was far more satisfying and rewarding than all the three number ones put together, to be honest. And I absolutely swear to you, because of that struggle, I felt as if I'd achieved something monumental with that. And it was such a lovely thing, having struggled for so long to get back to that position. And it completely overshadowed those first three, despite the fact that they did a bit better.
It was well deserved. It's a fantastic album.
Thank you.
But now mainly we're here to talk about Intruder, which is about climate change. What was the catalyst that inspired you to write a whole album about that climate change?
Well, the first one, the previous one, rather, Savage, had a climate change sort of foundation to it. The idea behind that one was that, the climate apocalypse had happened, the earth was devastated, and we've gone 100, 200 years in the future. And that looked at the human condition as to how people would need to live to survive in that hostile environment. Brutalities with each other, just living from day to day was a real problem. So that album looked at how that would mess with people and what we would become as human beings because of it. That's what I was trying to do with it anyway. Intruder still has climate change as a foundation, but Intruder looks at the planet itself, and if the planet could speak, if it could voice the feelings that it might have, what would it say? How does it feel? And obviously it's to do with how does it feel about us and what we're doing to it. Is it disillusioned? Is it disappointed? Does it feel betrayed by us? Is it angry? And if it's angry, does it want to fight back? Is it already fighting back? Is the virus the first stage of it fighting back? Is it the first of many? Will they become more refined and more deadly as time goes by? Does it see us as the problem, the virus? Does it see us as a virus that it needs to get rid of? And that's really what Intruder is all about. So yes, it very much has a climate change theme to it, but it's really looking at specifically how you humanize the planet. You give the planet human emotions. You put what it's going through into the mind of a human, and how a human would feel if these things. Now, I know from my own, if my kids grew up and started attacking me and mistreating me and abusing me, I'd feel pretty fucked off with that.
Yeah.
And absolutely demoralized and disheartened, and you couldn't understand why it was happening. And so if the planet can feel anything at all, I'm sure it has similar feelings to that. And it must be angry, and it must want to fight back, and it must now see us not as these lovely little creatures that it nurtured when we first dragged ourselves out of the ocean, but as this incredibly hostile, disgusting sort of swarm that seems to be intent on destroying it.
I'm sure you started recording the album before the pandemic. How did you feel whenever that started happening while you were recording, and that's sort of themes you were dealing with?
It was bizarrely uncanny, the similarities between what I was writing about, because there was already a thread of a virus in the music before the actual virus came along. So, but I did incorporate it. There's a song called "The Gift," which is about COVID specifically. It's sort of sarcastic. It talks about how this gift will take your breath away. Things like that. But it was bizarre. I was probably about 2/3 of the way through it. I'm not entirely sure, but I was well into it. So the whole idea of it, the whole themes behind it, everything to do with it was already well underway, and most of it was in place already. So for the virus to come along and kind of be a clear example of exactly the sort of thing that I was already talking about was just really weird, to be honest, in a horribly tragic kind of way. And I wasn't specifically talking about COVID or that kind of a virus, but the idea that the Earth would fight back would almost certainly be by some kind of a virus or another. That's, I know, there's bigger storms. We have the fires. We have the floods now. The weather itself is a very visible sign that things are different. But is that necessarily the Earth fighting back? It might not be. That might be the pains that it's going through that you're witnessing there. How would it actually fight back? And so this idea of viruses and that kind of thing was already well established there. So it was properly weird when it came along. Thinking, whoa, Christ almighty, it's actually happening. It's strange, man, strange.
You'll have to be careful about your next album, what you're going to write about.
I'm already on it, actually. I'm already on it.
What was the song writing process for this album? Has it changed much over the years? Because I know your first few albums you recorded pretty quickly and you hired out the synths and stuff like that there. How much has your process changed from then compared to this new record?
The actual process of writing the song, the very early bit, we simply sit down at a keyboard or whatever and write your tunes and get your arrangements together and that sort of thing, your melody lines and that. They're much the same, really. It's not really changed at all. When I first started writing, I wrote everything on guitar. But very, very soon after that, by about the second album, most of it was on piano. And then after that, everything's been on piano ever since. The difference is, I suppose, when I was writing the first things, I actually had a real piano. I would sit down at a real piano and play that, and I would upright one that my mum and dad got from a pub, actually. Nowadays, I sit at a keyboard, so it's either a digital piano, which is the one I have up here on this floor, or in the studio, it's a controller keyboard that's connected to a piano sound, a synth that sounds like a piano. But apart from that sort of slight technology difference, it's exactly the same as it was. I sit down at a keyboard, I work out the melodies, as clumsy and as terrible a player as I've always been. I still don't know the names of chords. I've got no idea. If somebody said to me, play a G sharp, sorry, mate, no idea what you're talking about. I know the note. I can play a G sharp note, but the actual chord, no idea. I've never learned. I've always been too scared, actually. Whatever. I've always thought that. I don't know where my ability to write songs comes from, or the ability to write the type of songs comes from. But I'm terrified of doing anything that might change it, that might sort of affect in any way at all how I write. I write very much by trial and error. I don't really know what notes are going to work with other notes. I still don't after 40 odd years of doing it. So I just try it and I go, oh, no, that doesn't work. Oh, shit, that's really bad. Yeah. Oh, that works. Where a proper keyboard player can go, oh, that's going to be great. That'll all work together. I can't do that. But I don't want to learn that because my fear is that knowledge generates a certain predictability. You would say, well, these notes will work with that chord, so they're the ones I'm going to try. Or in fact, that weird little one there that shouldn't really work with that might. It just might. Our Friends Electric has got this really weird note in it, and that started everything for me. It shouldn't really be there. And so my fear has always been that if I sort of learn music, then I will lose that experimentation kind of feel, that stumbling along kind of approach that I've always had to it, which has always worked. And so I don't want to learn. I do all right. I do all right as I am. I do all right not knowing. So let's just leave it.
As you say, you've done all right all these years, Intruder was produced by Ade Fenton again. I think it's your fifth album you've worked with Ade. Why do you think you work so well together?
Well, we were good mates before. So I think that, that helps, obviously, that, you get on well together and you socialise together. It's just not just about the work. We have a very, very similar sense of humour. We've both got Asperger's. We're both quirky in similar ways. And I think also, but with this being the fifth one, the way that we react to each other or interact with each other, especially when there's a problem, it's just easy. It's not going to be we don't have to make compromises. He doesn't get offended if I don't like anything the way other people have done over the years. I'm able to be as brutally sort of autistically honest as I want to be. I can just blurt stuff out the way that I do. Doesn't get offended. And vice versa, it's just a very, very good relationship between two people that get on really well, have very similar taste in music, have the same difficulties, if you can call them difficulties, which I don't really, but you know what I mean. It's got better, actually. When we first started doing it, it was a little bit fraught at times. I would not give Ade any sort of leeway to try a different idea to the one that I said I wanted. And so if he took a song in a radically different direction, I'm likely to say, "Oh no, man, no, hang on, that's not what I meant at all." And I think he found that a bit frustrating. Over time, I've come to understand that actually I should let that happen. That's all right. Then that's different to what I thought, but let's go with that and see where it goes. And sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes, but that's okay because, we've tried it. We've spent a week or two listening to that and trying to develop it and it didn't work out. But quite often it does. Mm-hmm. So I think that's given Ade a lot more kind of involvement in it. And it's also been good for me because I've sort of let go of the reins slightly and I've allowed it to just drift out beyond my initial ideas. And it's made for better music and for better albums. And that certainly happened with Intruder. But it took us a couple to get to that point, where I was willing to just let that go because, my immediate reaction was just to go, what, no, we're not doing that,
Yeah.
So it's been good, as we've understood each other more from a working point of view, so the albums have got better. It makes them a little bit more exciting to work on because your progress is faster because you're not debating every little thing that comes through the door. And it's just really funny, if you was to see our text exchanges or listen in on our FaceTime chats, it's as if we hate each other, and it's all taking the piss, ruthlessly and mercilessly taking the piss all the time. And he gives back as good as he gets. But it's really funny. Yeah, really, really funny. And we try, and if we absolutely outdo each other, you just sort of send a little thumbs up. Yeah. Brilliant, man. That you absolutely slaughtered me on that one. That was brilliant. So it's just a great relationship.
Yeah, sounds like it. Now, let's talk about some of the tracks. The first 2 tracks you've put out so far, amazing. Firstly, Intruder, and then the latest one was I Am Screaming. Did you put them out? Did you think they were the best representation of the rest of the album?
I don't really have much to do with it, if I'm truthful.
Yeah.
I'm slightly embarrassed sort of saying that, because I tend to have a lot to say about everything usually. But my history of picking tracks is awful. You know, I've got a really, really long history of picking the wrong songs to be singles or taster tracks, you know, whatever. And so now I just say, you know, there it is. You know, what do you think? You know, because I'm too close to it. I'm too invested in the music and the lyrical content to be able to just stand back and say, you know, which one of those would radio like? And I don't actually want to be involved in that. I don't want to be thinking about radio play because it's corrupting. One of the things that almost ruined my career back in the early 90s is I was so worried about trying to salvage the career because it was in trouble. You know, I'm listening to advice and I'm listening to pluggers and I'm listening to A&R men, and it just ruined everything. It ruined the music, and everything was a compromise, and you're trying to please all these people and not right was in your heart. And one of the aspects of that was radio play, you know, trying to write things that would sound good on the radio. And so, I mean, I'm paranoid as fuck about that now. You know, I don't want to think about radio play. What I mean is, when I'm writing a song, I absolutely don't want to be thinking, is that going to sound good on radio? You know, what should I change to make that sound good on radio? That's back on that, you know, that tortuous path back to oblivion as far as I'm concerned. You know, that's the wrong way of thinking. The only thing that I should be thinking about until the album is finished is that song as good as it can be? That's it. That's the one and only thing that you've got to think about. Is that song as good as it can possibly be? I should not be thinking about, will the record company like this? You know, I should not be thinking about, will the radio like this, or will the plugger like this, you know, or any of that stuff. That cannot be on your mind. So when it's done, I just hand it over, you know, and they choose everything.
How do you know when it is done?
Usually because the deadline has just gone. And people are ringing me up saying, where is it? And I go, oh, sorry, you know, almost, which is actually a good thing, you know, or else you just go on forever, you know, because you can always make them better, always. You know, I could spend the rest of my life working on one song, and you can always make it better. You will always think up new things. You will always think up, you know, slightly better lyric than the one you did that, you know, it says it a little bit better than you have. Just because it could, honest to God, go on forever, you know. So these deadlines, they're to make people like me have an end point. You know, that's it. You can mess about with it for as much as you like until that day, and then that day we need it. You know, we're going to have to put it out. So I'm all right with that, actually. You know, deadlines they're always a pain when they're approaching, but they're absolutely essential. Yeah, vital for me, or else I'd never finish anything, I don't think.
3 songs on the album feature an instrument called, hopefully I pronounced this properly, a Yaybahar. Is that correct?
Yaybahar.
Yaybahar, invented by a Turkish musician called Gorkum Sen. Can you explain what it is and how did you discover it?
I can't explain too much about what it is because it just looks bizarre to me. It has a central kind of upright column which has strings on it. And I've seen Gorkum play them with fingers and with bow. And then it has a series of springs that kind of sprout out of it in some bizarre fashion, which are connected to drums. And the drums, from what I can see, seem to vary. You can have different types of drums in it to give different effects. And I've seen him play it. And at some point, you know, it's beautiful. It's very Middle Eastern. And then he'll lean forward a little bit and he'll either hit with a bow or with his hand. He'll hit these springs. And it just makes all this weird stuff happen. It is phenomenal. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. I've never heard anything like it. Certainly never seen anything like it. As far as I know, it's all organic. I don't think there's anything electronic going on in there, but there might be. But I've never seen any wires or anything. Mm-hmm. I've seen several photographs of it, and it looks slightly different in all of them. Yeah, so I think he does just bolt on different bits depending on what sort of sound he's going for. But it's beautiful. The sounds that it can make are just ethereal and amazing, and yet they can be really aggressive and in your face. I found out about him because I was chatting to a fan one day, and we were talking about the fact that I like Middle Eastern melodies and instrumentation and sounds and so on. And he said, "Have you heard about this man called Gorkum Sen?" And I hadn't. So he sent me a couple of links, and I went on these links and started to look into it. And there was one in particular. He was doing a session in Germany with a keyboard player, and the music that this keyboard man was making was brilliant. And, huge big grooves and amazing sounds. And so it was very much the sort of thing I was doing anyway. So I was able to see the Yaybahar, or hear the Yaybahar, in a live performance with heavy electronic music, and I could see clearly that it merged beautifully, and also that Gorkum had a fantastic feel and reaction to what the electronic side of things was doing. So I thought, you're made for this, and that instrument is made for what I'm doing. So I got in touch with him, and actually Ade Fenton got in touch with him initially, and he was a bit cagey actually to start with. Yeah, a little bit. He was lovely, really lovely, but it's his thing. Now, the Yaybahar is his life. He's invented it, he's built it, he's developing it. He's the only one that can play it. And he's therefore very protective about it, very precious about it, which I understand completely. And he was very worried that, we were going to record all these things and then make like a sample CD of his song and of his sounds and sell it and just completely ruin what he was trying to do. So I don't know whether that comes from experience, or that might have been done to him before. Anyway, we took some time and some great care with lawyers, drawing up these contracts so that he was completely protected and he had no worries on that front. And when that was done, he got into it. Actually, he did one song. We were nearly at the deadline. We were running out of time. So, he really had to get on with the last two because we only had a few days left. And then we got a phone call from an ambulance. He was in an ambulance being rushed to hospital with some emergency going on for some emergency surgery. And that's his manager was with him. And then she was saying, what's going on? And there's sirens were in the background. Woo, 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 woo. And I thought, that's it, done. There's no way we're going to get the other two songs. So I'm trying to be nice about it, so writing back to him saying, oh, that's terrible. You take all the time you need. Don't worry about the album. And inside I'm going, fuck. We need it. And it was amazing. I mean, he had this, big old surgery, went back home to recuperate and carried on doing the stuff while he was recuperating with all, stitched up and everything. Wow. So all credit to him, man. And he's lovely. He's a really lovely, gentle man. He's brilliant. So yeah, a great experience. I'm really, really, really sort of proud and honoured to have it on the album.
Your songs they're very dark sounding. Have you ever maybe written an uplifting song and thought, I can't use that. I'm Gary Numan.
No, I don't think I have. Do you know what? I think probably the brightest song that I ever wrote is probably Cars. I think the poppiest song I ever wrote was probably Cars. And that sort of lyrically, that's not particularly uplifting. That sort of, I wrote that because I was attacked in my car once. And so now I feel, cars are like a little safety bubble, like a tank for civilians, And I've always felt like that about them, still do to this day. I always, when I get in and I close the door, lock it, and there's a noticeable just drop of tension. Even now, I'm 63 years old now, and I still feel that protective cocoon close around me when I close the door of my car. But, sort of musically, that's sort of fairly bright and upbeat, and it chunks along quite nicely. And the lyric, I'd say it's not particularly uplifting. It's not really down. I'm talking about feeling safe rather than feeling worried. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like my other stuff. But that's the closest I think I've ever come to it. So it says a lot, really, about the rest of it.
When you're writing songs, do you think a great melody or sound is more important than a good lyric?
I think melody is the most important thing, personally. I think closely followed by a good lyric. But I think you can have a pretty terrible lyric and still enjoy the tune.
Yeah.
And I could throw examples of that, but that would be unfair. But yeah, I mean, I know of some great songs, great tunes with absolutely awful lyrics, but you still like it. Whereas a really great lyric with an awful tune, it still just grates on you a little bit. Yeah, you still appreciate the lyric, I guess, but no, they're both hugely important. But I would just say, melody first, lyric close second. After that, it matters less, and I don't mean to be disparaging to producers on that sort of thing, because it's all very, very important. But I think you can have a great song. I mean, sometimes you hear cover versions of great songs, and the cover version is not that brilliant. It doesn't sound that great. It's not that well done, but it's still a brilliant song, and you still love it. And I think that's the thing. A great song just sort of stands out. You get a great song with a great production, and you've absolutely killed it with a great lyric as well.
Is there an artist or a band that would be a dream collaboration for you? You'd love to work with? Maybe a producer?
Producer, no. I can't think of anyone I'd rather work with than Ade. Although there's plenty that are great. Alan Moulder is a friend of mine. He's a brilliant producer. Flood, great producers. There's loads. Nick Launay, brilliant producer. I have a particular set of anxieties when I'm working. My confidence is fragile at best. I struggle when I'm working on things. I don't have a great deal of confidence, and what I do have is very easily damaged. So for me, making albums is quite a torturous process. Half of it is not just trying to come up with ideas; it's battling your own sort of demons, so to speak, and your own lack of confidence, and nothing sounds good enough, and you can get down very easily about that, and that hurts your confidence even more. It's a constant battle, and quite a difficult one, I might add. And so the idea of working with a producer that I'm not absolutely comfortable with or familiar with, even if it's a friend, I think it would add a level of stress to it that I probably wouldn't survive. I wouldn't enjoy, I don't think, anyway. Whereas with Ade, I can be absolutely myself, and he completely understands all of the things that I go through, and it just works really, really well. From a band point of view, working with bands, there are a huge amount of people I admire, huge. But as far as it comes back to confidence again, I think, actually, to want to work with somebody else, certainly, especially people that you admire or you feel are, special in some way. I haven't got the confidence. I don't think that what I could offer would be worthwhile, would match up to the genius that they are. And so all the people that I really admire, I would be too nervous to work with. I wouldn't be interested in working with anybody else because I don't admire them. So it's a bit of a sort of catch-22, really. I'm a massive fan of Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails, and he's a good friend now. And we've talked about doing things together several times over the years, but I've never pushed it for exactly that same reason. I just don't feel that I would be able to contribute anything worthwhile that could match the genius that would be coming in from the other side. So I just do my own thing, comfortably in my own insecurities.
So the album's coming out in May. Is there any plans to take the album out onto the road when safe to do so?
Yeah, I mean, the touring side of it has been, the touring side of albums has always been sort of massively important. So this would be the first time I've ever released one where touring hasn't been a key factor, except for one, actually. I did one in 1981 where I knew I wasn't going to tour that one because I'd retired from touring, effectively, supposedly. But I was flying around the world at the end of that year. And so I used this round the world adventure in this little aeroplane. That was the way I promoted it. So as we flew around the world and stopped off all these sort of hundreds of little places, I would be talking to media about the album then. So I still toured it in a way, just not with the stage show. This would be the first one that's never had a full touring campaign or any touring campaign attached to it. So it's a new experience for all of us. The record company seemed quite happy about it. BMG, they're not fazed by it at all. They seem to think that for them it's good in a way, in that all of the PR opportunities that come along, I'll be able to do everything because I'm not going to be away touring. So from their point of view, I'm like a captive PR campaign at the moment. And I understand that, that actually makes a lot of sense. And for me, that's actually a better way to do it. I'm not missing out on opportunities. I'm not trying to squeeze them in between sound checks and gigs where you're frazzled. And do you know what I mean? It's a much more sort of professional way of going about it. And yet you're not out there taking the album to the very people you want to buy it. Mm-hmm. You're not out there pushing it and playing it and letting people hear it in the best environment, which is on stage, which I've always thought is absolutely essential. And aside from all of that, it's the thing that I love doing the most. Everything about making an album and promoting it is all towards getting on stage and singing it in front of people. That is kind of the icing on the cake. That's the thing that you're aiming for, the cherry on the top of it all. And so to not have that, it feels a bit weird. It feels a bit it's slightly deflating in a way that I've done the record, it's all come out, all the artwork's done, I'm really proud of it. When I'm chatting to everybody about it, and people are saying lovely things, and naturally now go right, and now we're off. We get on the bus and we're away, and now it's just going to be a year and a half of fun. Roaming around the world, just having a laugh with it, and all of that's all gone. So I don't know. I mean, it might be that it actually helps the record, and it does better. It does better because of it. I don't know, but it's certainly not as much fun. That's for sure.
I think it will be good when you eventually do get out on the road. The fans will have had the time to live with the album, and they'll know it. They'll know the album and they'll know the words. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it doesn't mean that it will never go on stage. Obviously, you're right. It will at some point or another. The timing is going to be very, very different because it'll probably be a year after it comes out. We are going to be touring next year. We had a tour booked in for this June, but that's obviously been cancelled now. There is an American tour booked in for October, November. That's may happen. Not sure yet. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one. So that effectively the first full tour for this album, as far as Britain's concerned, and Europe will be sort of early part of next year. But I'm going to do another album. I'm starting another album now, which will come out, if it comes together, before that next tour. So when we do that next tour, there'll be 2 new albums. There's going to be like an Intruder Part 2, so to speak.
Right.
So we'll be touring 2 albums at the same time. Again, I've never done that before. So that's going to be amazing. When that actually comes together and we're out on that tour, and you've got 2 albums worth of new material that you can be drawing from. That's a pretty cool position to be in, actually. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to that.
And normally, whenever a band or an artist plays the new songs, a lot of people go to the bar because they don't know them. But they will know them because they'll have plenty of time to listen to them by the time you get out on the road.
I've not had that as a problem, actually, funnily enough. If anything, the bizarre thing that happened with me was, maybe because I've been doing cars and that for so long, I think everyone has heard it enough. So you do it and everyone goes, hey, great. But it doesn't have that same level of sort of enthusiasm that the newer stuff seems to do. Now, that is possibly because the newer stuff I'm writing is of a much better quality now than like I said, it was in the early 90s and I wasn't doing such good stuff. But I noticed I think maybe some of it is because the newer material of the last sort of 4 or 5 albums or so definitely generated a new influx of people. So we have a significant number in the audience these days who are not old fans that have stuck with me, although thank God they're still there as well. But there's this entirely new generation, and I think a lot of those people came because of your 9 Inch Nails and the Sugar Babes and Manson and Foo Fighters and all these people that did cover versions or talked about me as being innovative, talked about me in very positive ways. I think that encouraged a lot of their audience just to come and check me out. So that was fascinating. We saw a noticeable influx of new people. And then as the new stuff has done better and the chart positions have got stronger. So I think that brings you to the attention of people as well, new people that, but maybe even think I'm a new act and don't know any better, except for my baggy old face, I suppose. But do you know what I mean? So now when we're doing shows, what is noticeable, I have actually seen the front row of gigs not know the words to Cars when we did it. Not know them. You see them get, mouthing as best they could, but clearly not knowing what the song is. And being too young, they couldn't have been born when Cars came out. And then further back, you see, obviously, everyone knows it. So in a way, I mean, it's a brilliant position to be in a way. And you've kind of got a multi-layered career where the different layers have got different people that connect with that particular layer. And it's really helped me. Obviously, it helps me to sell tickets, which is a slightly mercenary way of looking at it. But it does, because you've got different generations that will come along for different reasons, for different albums. Mm-hmm. Some that will only want to listen to Savage songs and Splinter and Intruder probably. And then others that probably can't because they really want to listen to Ivor and Electric and Cars and that sort of stuff, and they don't mind the new stuff. But to be fair, I mean, even that sounds like I'm being slightly dismissive of the older fans, but I've got to say that they're amazing in the way they've supported the new stuff as well. Mm-hmm. Savage was voted, I think, that one of the top 3 albums I've ever made by the fans' own sort of discussion group. That's pretty cool. I would normally expect him to say Replicas or Pleasure Principle, one of those early ones, but he wouldn't. Savage. Savage was in there. So I think what I'm doing at the moment, fingers crossed it carries on with Intruder, seems to be working for all of them. And there isn't that exodus to the bar when the new one comes on, which would be pretty demoralising, actually. But no, at the moment, that's not happening. And as I say, fingers crossed when we do Intruder, it doesn't happen then either. But I'll keep my eye open for that.
You mentioned about like the 9 Inch Nails and Sugar Babes covering your songs, and a lot of artists in the last lot of years have cited you as a major influence. So people like Kanye, again, 9 Inch Nails, and people like Lady Gaga. How does that feel?
It's amazing, and it's very flattering, and I'm pretty blown away by all that. But on the other hand, it's sort of hard to grasp in a way. It's almost as if they're talking about somebody else or a character that I invented. If I'd written a character for a film, I don't know, the Lone Ranger, or do you know what I mean? So it's a character. And they're going, oh, yeah, I love the Lone Ranger. It's amazing. And I'm saying, yeah, fantastic, but it's not really me. Mm-hmm. It's something I wrote, something I invented. It's not really me. It feels a little bit like that because when I wake up in the morning, and stumble into the bathroom, you're not thinking, oh, Kanye West said all that stuff, Lady Gaga. I said, that's not what you're thinking. What you're thinking is, I'm back in the studio today and I'm really worried because that song's not coming together. I'm panicking a bit, and the last thing you feel is special or clever. You're just very aware that you're struggling again, and all those fears about have you run out of ideas and all of that, that just overwhelms you again and you're struggling with your confidence and all that shit happens. The other side of the coin also is that, when these people say these lovely things, lovely as it is, and I am incredibly grateful, there's a pressure comes with that. That is some serious shit to live up to. So that just adds to the worries of what you, in the studio, oh my God, people, Lady Gaga said, blah, 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 no, people are going to expect it to be amazing. And it's been a really bad day. And, so... But I would not change it for the world. It's an incredible thing to happen, and the fact that so many people have done it obviously is incredibly amazing. So it's brilliant. I sound like I've got like I'm being a bit down with it. I don't mean that at all. I really don't. But it's just weird. It's a weird the way my brain processes that kind of amazing news, and it finds a way of being worried about it somehow. My wife says that I'm one of those glass half empty people, and I know what she means because I'm born. I think I'm just born to be insecure and to worry. I worry a lot about the future.
Well, you definitely shouldn't be, because look at the body of work you've created, and the new album's absolutely amazing. So
Oh, well, thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You published your autobiography last year, which I've just started reading in 2020. When you're writing books, do you use the same discipline doing that as you would when you're recording music or writing music?
Don't really have much of a discipline for books. I'm not sort of strategic at all. I just start at the beginning and then just work through. And I have an awful memory, so I rely a great deal on your friends reminding me of things that happened. For a lot of it, there's a Gary Numan website called New Reference that I went to regularly. That had a list of all the tours that I'd done, when the albums came out, who was on them, because I'd forgotten all of it. Awful memory, awful. Mm-hmm. Luckily for me, I've had a life which has been so full. I mean, so much has gone on with it, and so many amazing things have happened that you forget the detail. In fact, it's amazing how many of the amazing things you forget, because you're just kind of swamped with activity, which is a very, very enviable thing. I know that's a good thing. But when it was time to write the book, I was shocked at how many blank years there were. 2001, no idea. No idea. What did I do in that whole year? I can't remember, And so I go into these websites and, I did a tour and he was in it and he wasn't in it. Oh, I remember why he wasn't in it. And all these little things would trigger you to remember. And so it really was just a chronological, I was born on this day right up to, and here I am today finishing the book and all that in between. So there was sadly no discipline whatsoever, other than going out there religiously every morning and staying out there till 10 or 11 o'clock at night to get it done, because there was quite a ferocious deadline on that as well. But without the help of friends and those websites and the fans actually who reminded me of a lot of stuff, it would have been half as big as it is, because I just couldn't remember shit.
Said at the start, you were the pioneer of machine rock, as you like to call it. What bands or artists that came after you? Who be into?
Nine Inch Nails was a big one. I was a big Depeche Mode fan. I thought Violator and Songs of Faith and Devotion were just a work of genius. Absolutely. I mean, Songs of Faith and Devotion was so pivotal to me. It's like 93, 94 time, around about then. I'd made this terrible record called Machine and Soul in 92. Big pile of cow poo, that one. And it was so bad. And I was in such a bad way, creatively and emotionally. And so my relationship was in shit. I was in debt. Trying to repossess my house. My career was fucking nowhere. And I was writing shit songs. So life was a bit grim at that point. And then I met Gemma. And Gemma started to play music that I hadn't heard before, and a sort of, successful music, but I just hadn't. I'd become really reclusive and wasn't listening to stuff. And she played me Songs of Faith and Devotion. And she played me that just at the time when I was beginning to get my shit together and realize what I've been doing was wrong, on how I had to rethink and kind of imagine everything and go back to it being a hobby. There was this whole complete rebuilding of what I was about. Was going on. And I heard Songs of Faith and Devotion and some Nin stuff and other stuff. And I just thought it was so brilliant and so much better than anything I'd ever done. And it was a real lesson, so I just took that and I tried to learn as much as I could from it. I don't mean sort of nicking the lyrics and that sort of shit. I mean, from an attitude point of view, the depth of the sound, the weight of it, it was just brilliant. And it was pivotal. I really do mean, I think without her, obviously, in the first place, who did so many things to fix me, but her introducing me to new sorts of music was an incredibly important part of that as well. If I hadn't have heard that album, I don't think I would have made Sacrifice, which was my 94 album. And that was the one that turned everything around for me. Sacrifice was the first record that took me on this particular journey of the career that brings me up to today, really. And it started everything. And it was the birth of this entirely new attitude and reason for being in music and reason for writing songs. It was a complete and fundamental changing for what I've been doing before. And it wouldn't have happened without that record. It really wouldn't. And I've met Alan Wilder since then. I know he's left Depeche, but I've become a really good friend of mine, actually. And I've said to him many times, I can pretty much hold you up as a person that saved my life, really. Certainly saved my career, probably my life with it. So the work you did on that was so brilliant and so inspiring that it enabled me to completely reinvent my entire career and go in a different direction. So.
You famously have a passion for flying, Gary. When was the last time you flown a plane?
Oh, it's been, as far as flying one myself, it's been quite a few years now. When the children came along, I was an air display pilot, so I used to do all that low-level aerobatics and formation flying, all that stuff in old military airplanes from the war. And I became an examiner. I was an instructor for that for a bit. I was an examiner for a while. There was this drive to try to make sure that the right people were flying the airplanes, not just the rich people, because they were getting killed. And loads of good people getting killed as well. But there was an attempt to try to make sure that the right people were flying the right airplanes. And I was part of that. And so they brought people like me in that was sort of had a particular expertise and a particular type of airplane, so it was a really good system anyway. So I was involved in that for a little bit, but it still didn't change the fact that no matter how good everybody was, people still got killed at a tremendous rate, 4 or 5 a year in a very small group of people. And I was becoming increasingly aware of that. I'd got married. My closest friend in flying was killed in a crash, and that really upset Gemma. That really brought it home to her how dangerous it was. So she didn't want me to do it anymore. And then we were starting a family, and I thought to myself, I love doing this. This is amazing, but most of the people I know are dead now. When I started doing it, Gemma doesn't want me to do it. She's kind of terrified every time I walk out the door, and surely it's too reckless a thing to do, too risky a thing to do if you've got a young family. And so I decided that I'd probably push my luck enough. I was still all right. I hadn't had any big accidents or anything. And I decided to pull out of it. Big decision, really, because it was my whole life, to be honest, much more than music had ever been. I absolutely loved it. And it gave me such a lot of the self-esteem, and it was really important to me. But I think it's the right decision. Well, I joined the team when I first got involved in display flying initially, and there were 6 of us in it. 4 of them were killed, in different accidents over the years. My close teammate was killed, like I said. It was a fairly high attrition rate of people anyway. And so decided to get out of it. Thought I'd carry on flying just little airplanes, ordinary Cessnas and Pipers, that sort of thing, and just found it so boring. I couldn't adapt. I couldn't go from what I'd been doing, which is all hairy and exciting and close to the ground and upside down and all that, real adrenaline shit. I just couldn't go back to pottering along at 100 mile an hour in a Cessna. I just couldn't, And so, and then I realised, I did a check one day, and I was nowhere near good enough. I wasn't flying enough. I sort of lost that edge that you need, and I sort of recognised that. I thought, no, I'm a danger to myself, I think, if I keep doing this now. So I pulled out of it completely. Then that was probably, I'm not sure, 9 years ago, 9, 10. So it's been a while, and I keep threatening to myself that I'll get back into it when the kids have moved out, and it's just me and Gemma again. But I think, in all honesty, that's unlikely now, to be honest, which is a weird thing to admit because it's such a big part of my life. But and near here, there's a team near here fly exactly the same airplanes as a team that I was in, and every weekend they fly over because I live really near to an airport here, and I sort of rub salt in the wound a little bit, and I run out into the garden and I'm really critical. Should be closer. And shut up. Sad little man, armchair expert all of a sudden.
Just a few more questions, Gary. You've had such a long and amazing career, but looking back, what's been your highlights?
Savage was my highlight. It really was. for everything I said before, that long struggle to get back to that point, that was the most satisfying moment of my entire career, more than number ones. Honest to God, more than number ones. Outside of that, would be the number ones. To have a number one single, number one album, that's just history book stuff, and no one can ever take it away from you. And I had it with the band Tubeway Army, which is my band, and then I had it as solo. So I've got that. I had a double number one single and album at the same time twice. That was pretty cool. Felt pretty good about that. Played Wembley. I've done big shows. Tons of people there. Amazing experiences to go through. But from a career point of view, that's pretty much all there is, isn't it? You put out records and they do well or they don't. If they do really well, that's a big moment. You can do particular concerts which stand out. We did the Royal Albert Hall in 2018, I think. The only time I've ever done it. I think it sort of sold out in a couple of hours, and it was amazing. Yes, that was brilliant. That was a lovely reinforcement of what the album had done in terms of getting the career back, to a reasonable level. That felt amazing, particularly. But again, that was Savage. That's fairly recent. The thing that I'm most looking forward to in the future, which for me is the final piece of my climb back from when I retired. But when I retired at Wembley. I did 3 nights at Wembley Arena, and that was me saying goodbye to everybody. Now, clearly, I didn't stick with that because I've been doing it ever since. But it was a genuine intention at the time, because I thought I was getting too messed up with the whole fame thing, and I wanted to back out of it, But next year, we're doing Wembley again. And getting back to Wembley has been my ambition since 1981, when I did it the last time and realised I'd made a terrible mistake and pretty much ruined my career. So Wembley has become a symbol to me of winning, of coming back, to be in this massive thing and throwing it all away and becoming virtually nothing again. That struggle to get back to where you were before, for me, is symbolised by being able to play at Wembley Arena. And so it's actually in the schedule for next year. That will be, if that happens, that will be the best moment of my life, probably. So I doubt I'll ever be able to beat anything after that. So that, I don't know where to go after that, actually. But that, in a way, the most sort of significant part of my life has been to try to get back to that one moment again. So the fact that it's sort of that close now, sort of tantalising, man. It's good.
That'll be amazing. Do you ever wonder what sort of music you would be making if you hadn't went into the studio that day and pressed a key on a synthesizer?
Yeah, I do actually. Well, I obviously would have found out about it eventually, because all these other people were out there. They were already doing it. Your Human Leagues and Orchestral Manoeuvres and Ultravoxes, they were out there doing it long before me. So it was there, and it was just waiting to be discovered. I was just lucky in that I stumbled across it quite late in the day and was the first person to have the big hit with it. So I get all the glory, but I really hadn't done the footwork, so to speak. So it's slightly unfair that I get all the glory for it. So it would have been there, and I would have discovered it at some point. And so I think, have still been involved in electronic music, because it's the thing that attracts me to it would still have done so. That same attraction would still have been there. I just wouldn't have been at the front end of it in the way I was, for real. But how that would have shaped things, I wonder, I really wonder how it would have been. Would I have written the same songs? Because the timing would have been different. How would I have been different as a person? How would that have affected the creative things that you're doing? My career has followed the path it's followed for all of its ups and downs because of the timing of things. And, partly because I get all this pioneering legend type stuff, because I was lucky enough to be the first big one. If I hadn't have been, I wouldn't have had those labels. Would that have been to my advantage or disadvantage to not have had that kind of hanging over you as your career moved on? Don't know, man. Don't know. It would have been different, though. I know that.
Maybe there's another Gary Numan in a parallel universe, just doing that thing.
Bitter and twisted, probably.
Well, Gary, that's my questions finished. Thanks very much. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
Much appreciated. And love the album, and I wish you all the best with the album and getting to Wembley. Hopefully, it's amazing.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I hope so. Thank you very much. All right,
mate. Thanks, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The XS Noize Podcast with Mark Millar.